got the doctor in front of your name.
So many different accomplishments that you were going through. And I'd love for you to tell the story because I just love hearing your story, Auntie, for names that y'all may have heard of, like, Usher, TLC, Goody Mob, possibly, if you're not living under a rock. But Auntie, can you tell us, like, okay, how you got into this industry, how you launched these
Yeah.
careers, and also, like, at the height of your career, also experiencing suicidal ideation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to Syracuse University, and I majored in television, radio, and film. And so I knew I wanted to do something either in radio industry, within the music industry was starting to pop in Atlanta and really gain a lot of traction. So I would intern at Capitol Records during the summers of my college years. And so once I graduated, the gentleman that had hired me for my internship started consulting for LaFace Records, which was Babyface and L.A. Reid's record company. And he was like, LaFace is looking for a promotions director. Excuse me. And I thought, especially back then, most people's entry level or entry points into the music industry was an administrative position. So I was like, I'll whatever, volunteer or be somebody's assistant. But he was like, they're looking for a promotions director. I was like, I don't really know what that is, but I'm definitely going to take the interview. So, because you always got to take the interview, right? Because you just never know. And so I got hired as promotions director, 1993, straight out of college, making like $30,000 a year. You couldn't tell me nothing. I got my first car. And my very first record I ever worked was Players Ball from Outkast.
That was your first record?
It was like so iconic. And also had to hit the road with Toni Braxton. She was on tour with Frankie Beverly and Maze. And rest in peace to Mr. Frankie Beverly, who recently passed away. And I literally met Frankie Beverly and I watched the tour every night. That's how good it was. So not bad for a first tour. And what I was doing was either before or after the show, I was getting all the contest winners and music people from the radio stations, music directors, program directors, to meet and greet Toni and take pictures with her. So that's kind of how I got my start. Ended up, doing promotions with TLC, went on a Crazy Sexy Cool tour, was on the bottom bunk in the back of the bus. And people used to call me the fourth member sometimes because, we were all short and everything, and learned a lot and helped the girls, while they were on the road. And that just like really opened up my life from a pop music perspective because I was used to dealing with a lot of hip hop and R&B. And then fast forward, after LaFace was, and I worked with Goody Mob, shout out to Goody Mob. And after LaFace was closed, I moved to New York City and started doing some work with Jermaine Dupri. And then I got to do some marketing with Prince. I marketed the Musicology album. I don't know if you knew that, but I did for Prince, and I toured with Prince on the Musicology tour. Just surreal. And then I ended up as executive vice president in 2005 for Universal Motown Records, head of marketing on the urban side. And it was great, but I wasn't really taking care of me. I mean, it's so funny, like, when you get higher up in the music industry like that, you get used to like certain amenities. So I had a driver, not on call 24/7, but you went to the airport or go to events, you could call a driver. And so I would use the same guy to come to my townhouse to pick me up. Well, I was in New York last year, and I was like, I wonder, is this gentleman still driving? And he was. And so he up, and we're talking, it's been like 14, 15 years now. And he said, he says, really good to see you. He said, and I kind of told him what I had gone through and how I left. He said, I don't know how you did it. He said, I would drop you off at your house from an event at 1 a.m, and one of my other drivers was set to be at your house at 4 a.m. He's like, wow. I don't know how you, like, when did you eat? When did you sleep? And Dr. Chanda, I was going like an Energizer bunny, but it wasn't healthy for me. And so then you add in the stressors of being, a Black female. And at that level, you're dealing with more the corporate side of the music. It's not as creative. It's all about budgets and meetings and line items. And I felt like, I had lost just a little bit of the creativity that I loved about it. And then I had to deal with some of the microaggressions from some of my white male counterparts. So it was really layered. And then also my uncle was really sick and had passed away, who helped to raise me after my father died. So that kind of sent me into a depression. And then my mother started developing dementia. And I was like, I'm all the way up here in New York. Mom's got dementia. And so it all whole world kind of came crashing down. And I was riding in a taxi going uptown to Harlem one day, and my whole right side went numb. Like I couldn't feel any side of my body. So I had all these tests run, and they diagnosed me with something called cervical spinal stenosis. So I had issues going on with my spine, and I thought I had to have surgery. And so I ended up just quitting and walking away from it all because I had the physical stress that manifested into emotional stress as well, or even vice versa. And so it was just time to go. I mean, I was making a ton of money, almost $500,000 a year. Wow. I sometimes I have to pay myself to even, was I really making that? And I looked at an old tax return one time. I was like, wow, I was really making that kind of money. But I left it all on the table. Yeah. I was like, you know what? I'm done. And I went back home, and, you know, for like 4 years, I started a live music event here in Atlanta. I was still doing some music consulting, and I started doing a lot of community service work. And I was like, through my depression, I guess God was just leading me into more of a life of service, and I couldn't understand it. But then fast forward to 2014, when I talked to my best friend the day I was leaving for a vacation to go overseas. And I knew she had been experiencing some physical and mental health issues as well. But she called me and she was like, have you left for the trip yet? I said, I'm actually at the airport about to board. She's like, it's the worst day of my life. I said, well, hold on. I'll be the last person to board. Like, let's talk this out. And I thought we had gotten to a point where like I was going to get her a new therapist. I was going to help her find more doctors on the physical side, a neurologist, and got to where I was in Europe and literally went to the apartment of my family friends, my bonus sister, went to a restaurant, and 3 hours later got a call that she had shot herself. Wow. It was one of the worst days of my life. I know I cried that whole night. And I jumped back on the plane the very next morning coming back home. And I got here and she was already brain dead. It was awful.
My goodness.
The doctor in front of your name.